Hi and welcome to Medici Studio. My name is Amit and I am the co-founder and chief strategy officer of Medici. Today I am going to have a very interesting discussion with a long-time friend and co-founder and CEO of Open, which is a new bank in the SME banking space. Hi Anish, lovely talking to you. Hope you're doing great.
Yeah, it's always been a pleasure catching up with you, Amit.
Sure. So I will start with something really interesting which happened today itself. While on the way, the logistics guy who's going to help me today, he said that, okay sir, we will reach the bank in about 30 minutes. And I said, no, this is not a bank, it's a fintech company. That actually made me realize that I should probably start by asking you, if you were to explain what Open is to your grandmother, how would you explain it?
So, Open is actually a digital banking platform that helps small businesses automate their finance. Think of it as a platform that helps you automate your finances on top of a bank account.
Right. And if you were talking to a slightly more advanced audience which understands fintech, how would you describe it, right? So let me set the frame for it. So the Wall Street looks at fintech in this way, right? They say that there are distribution companies or distributors like NerdWallet and Bank Bazaar and all that. Then there are producers or providers who actually add significant value to the game. And then there are integrators which are almost like a bank, right? Almost like a complete financial services suite. So where would you classify yourself today?
We are sort of like an aggregator platform where we work with our partner banks and we offer a business banking platform to the businesses, because business banking has always been broken for this SMEs and small businesses.
Right, absolutely. I mean, I can tell you, I've been a serial entrepreneur, that opening a current account in this country is not easy at all. You talked about banks and working. So we actually do a lot of work between banks and fintechs, and fintechs usually have this complaint that it's very hard to work with a bank. It takes time and energy and all that. And you managed to work with 12 banks at once. So how does it work? How did you go about doing it?
I think we started very early. We are the first neo-banking platform in Asia. So when we started out in 2017, initially it was really tough to convince banks about a model, but I think we patiently invested a lot of our time on building the relationships, convincing banks about why we should actually work together to serve the SME target segment. So I think it took us a lot of time, but I think we heavily invested on in terms of like the building the relationships and convincing the banks.
So Anish, I have known you for around 7-8 years now. I wanted to ask something very personal, right? So I know between the period of 2001 2005, it was a difficult time of struggle. You were doing your first startup, and you even slept at railway stations back then. Then you continued and you did a NFC startup back in 2011. Then you did a payment gateway startup switch, and so on and so on. You kept going at it. And finally, after so many years of hard work and learning and building expertise in the payment space and fintech space in general, now that you have achieved so much success with Open, people think that it's an overnight success story, but there is a lot of learning and a journey behind it, right? So I wanted to know from you, what is those learnings that you can share with the audience?
Yeah, so the learnings from my experience is that the first startup, it was all about banking, which gave me a lot of exposure into how the banking systems work. And then in Payu and Citrus, understanding about the payment gateway systems and also the target segment, the SME segments which are actually catering. And all of them actually came handy while when I started Open.
Right. So basically, now just taking a cue from what you said, so Open is really a bank account, an accounting system put together, and then a payment gateway integrated in it, and then now you're also issuing a card, and then people can take a credit line. So all of this is bringing together, which came from the different experiences that you had in your life, right? So that's very interesting.
So mostly in the past two organizations, Payu and Citrus, where we used to deal heavily with a lot of the small businesses, one thing which I realized that business banking is like broken for these entrepreneurs. They used to struggle a lot when it comes to reconciling their cash flows, dealing with multiple interfaces like a separate payment gateway interface, separate accounting software, payouts to vendors and employees were always a pain. So I felt that like your bank account being the center point for all your inflows and your payouts, if you can exactly track where the money is actually coming from and where the money is going out by providing integrated suite of tools, that can actually help these businesses solve a lot of their problems. So that's what we are actually doing in Open.
Okay, a slightly controversial question here, that do the banks love you or do they hate you? And let's leave aside ICICI Bank because you are deeply integrated and you build in on that. But generally in the market, what do you think?
I think banks are now very much open to partnering with fintechs. They do really see the value, as we can see in other parts of the markets like the Europe or the US, where banks work very closely with fintechs. And banks also realize that there is actually a good opportunity in being a banking as a service platform where they work with different fintechs. And we had seen this happening in India, whether it is a PhonePe with Yes Bank or multiple banks are working with onto it. So banks are actually more receptive, and I think banks are really happy for players like us.
Maybe when we are talking about this, say 5 years down the line, when you have taken a substantial market share, things may differ, but I think you're right. And so I would describe this as a rebundling journey, right? So many fintech startups 5 years back in 2013-14, when we were looking at, they were basically trying to do unbundling. And now neobanks like you are actually trying to sort of rebundle that, which is amazing value proposition for a customer, because he does not have to go to 10 different apps, right? So you can pretty much do everything within an Open if you're a current bank kind of an account. Tell me why, so you have a freemium kind of a model. Why not everything free? Like, why are you charging subscription money today? Because I think once you increase in scale, you have opened 50,000 accounts. When it reaches 200, 500,000 accounts, I think you will start making tons of money through the other revenue streams as well, right? So why not free?
I think our platform is actually free. We don't actually charge a subscription revenue on the customers, even though we initially started out with that model. But
so you have done away with that?
Yeah.
5,000, 10,000?
10,000. So currently it's a freemium pay-per-use platform because we wanted to bring in more SMEs on the platform. We had to be more inclusive and more affordable for these small businesses, because in a market like in India, if you subscription actually scares people to even adopt the services onto it. And we have figured out multiple ways in which you can actually monetize this base of customers. So right now the the priority for us is actually to get these customers on board and provide them more value. So it's currently a freemium service.
So on that point, what are those revenue streams? How are you making money?
We make money in terms of interchange on the cards which we issue. We make money on the per transaction charges which we make from the customers. Certain value-added services we provide. For example, we have an app store where we offer a lot of third-party tools basically, or applications where we may share revenues. And some of them could be premium services like a subscription service where somebody may wanted to, for example, use a payroll from a third-party provider. He can actually use that as a subscription where we also generate revenues.
So one is you're doing about $4 billion payment transactions. So you're getting some money on that. Then commissions on, say, if somebody gets a credit line or uses payroll or any other services, you're getting that. And then what else? Is there something else?
Mostly on the cards issued by us, on the interchange revenues also we get a cut from our partner banks.
Okay, got it. What is the profile of the customers usually? I know that you're dealing in the SME segment, but SME is like 62 million customers depending on whom you are talking to. Like, people have different numbers in the market. So what is the number that you take into account, and then who are the customer segments within SME?
So consistently, like as you said, like there are like different reports which project out different numbers. So I'd always like go with the Sinor report of 51 million MSMEs, which have been following since the last 2 years, the same numbers basically. Our typical profile of customers, these are businesses with an annual turnover of anything between $100K US dollars to $300K US dollars. These are predominantly traders, retailers.
So like 70 lakhs?
Yeah.
To
70 lakhs to close to 3 crore.
3 crores, okay.
Onto it. And these are predominantly customers who are actually from the retail segment. They are B2B traders, B2B pump manufacturers, wholesale traders, FMCG distributors. Then there are like startups and developers who also form part of the...
I would have actually thought more of startups, and because this is an online platform, right? Digital onboarding, and then you also provide developer APIs and all that. So that's what I was thinking. But it's fascinating to know that traders and pump manufacturers and all that are also there.
So our learning from our previous businesses is that we initially used to focus a lot in our previous businesses on micro entrepreneurs and the freelancer base, and India being the second largest market for the freelancers, and it's a huge entrepreneur base here. But what we realized that the need actually exists for businesses who already use a cash management system or a transactional banking services. We found that it's easier to actually sell to those set of customers, and these are actually customers from cities like Kolkata, Mumbai, Surat, then Hyderabad, Chennai. And most of them are like tech savvy businesses, but they're like real offline businesses. So we started out with them, and we didn't focus too much on the startups and developers in the initial time, which we are going to focus from now on.
So which are your three biggest cities today?
Kolkata, Mumbai, and Ahmedabad.
And not Bangalore?
Bangalore for our startup customers, yes, but overall numbers, if you look at Bangalore, it doesn't come under the.
Wow, that's fascinating. I didn't expect that. Also, they say that in India that if it is not tally, it's not accounting, right? And I actually bought QuickBooks and gave to my CA in one of my previous companies, and he refused to use it after 6 months, especially when it was coming to the close of the year. How did you manage to tell these customers that you can actually operate accounting without using tally?
So in India, there are actually two sets of customers. The first set of customers who use the legacy desktop softwares, which they don't want it to change because they don't trust anything else. And then the next is the set of online savvy entrepreneurs who use various cloud accounting softwares onto it. So we have actually built an automated accounting engine which will target the online savvy entrepreneurs, where they can actually completely use our software for their end-to-end accounting platform, completely automated. Now, for the segment of the customers who use the desktop accounting softwares, we had actually built plugins, which so they don't have to change their accounting software. They just have to install our plugin, and it seamlessly connect with our business banking platform. And whenever there is a payable entry created, the entry comes on our internet banking dashboard. You make a payout, and then it gets synced back to their desktop software. So we cater to both the segment of customers. And you are right, like the legacy desktop market, it's a huge market, and they don't normally move to an online cloud provider.
Right. So they have the option of using your native accounting package, which is very smart, and it does auto bifurcation, reconciliation, and all that. Or you use if you are already using Tally, you can basically take use the plugin to get the dump of the data, and in fact, incidentally, yesterday we were trying to analyze Zero. So our intern was actually giving a presentation on that company, and we realized that how some of these big accounting companies have never been able to crack markets like India. Like Zero has great markets in New Zealand, Australia, UK, but they have never been able to crack India. Right. So this is a fascinating opportunity for you guys to sort of develop it. On those lines, I remember we did an article in 2014, which I know that we had discussed that 41 APIs in banking that fintechs can use. At that point of time, it was very hard for us to even explain what is these APIs and why we don't need to build products from scratch. But now you are actually offering a developer API on the bank, right? So how can you explain to our audience how does those APIs work and how do they help the end customer?
Well, if you remember, we did a hackathon together in 2014 on API banking, right? So as the businesses have evolved, especially what I call the millennial entrepreneurs, their business models have changed. A ride-sharing startup may wanted to programmatically pay their drivers after every ride is over, or a food tech startup may wanted to automatically pay their delivery boys the moment the food is delivered. Now, traditional banks never used to understand these business models. So that's where like the API banking actually helps. It actually helps businesses to bring banking into their business workflows. So think of it as like a programmable bank account wherein you can actually collect payments or move money to different bank accounts or your vendors or your suppliers kind of a things. Or you may wanted to fetch balances from your multiple bank accounts to sync it with your ERP for your reconciliations. So this is now more relevant. Businesses are increasingly aware of the requirements, and that's where we're actually seeing more adoption globally for API banking.
So if I'm a SME customer and I'm using your API, so I don't have to necessarily log in into Open. I can manage everything within my ERP, within my existing.
Yeah, so it depends on the use case. So in your case, if you're actually looking at reconciling of the bank accounts and the balances, you can actually pull out those statements and the balances. Or if you are say ride sharing startup, you may wanted to programmatically, your system may wanted to trigger the transactions directly from your bank account.
So like
Bulk payouts, for example.
they are possible.
They're possible. Or in specific case, I'm just talking about the ride sharing, like you have to pay the driver after every ride is over.
Yeah.
Automatically, you can actually you can actually integrate that with your product flow onto it.
Over this period of time, you have seen fintech companies evolve. You have yourself worked in a few of them. What do you think has changed in India fintech? What are the key 2-3 things that you have seen changing quite a bit, which now present a good opportunity for the entrepreneurs to tap into?
I think the first and most important thing is financial institutions and banks are now more open to partner with fintechs. If you remember, or if you look back like 5 to 7 years back, it was very difficult to actually get into a partnership with a bank. Only very few privileged enterprises have always access to banks because of variety of reasons in terms of trust, compliances, and things like that. But over the last 3-4 years, if you really look at, like, banks are now more open to work with fintechs, so that has actually reduced the entry barriers. Secondly, banks have started building accelerators themselves basically to bring in. Other part is, like, from a customer adoption point, I think customers are now more open to try out non-bank platforms, like in the case of UPI, whether everybody now uses a phone pay or a Google Pay instead of a bank app onto it. So the consumer adoption, awareness among customers, and I think even small things like demonetization also played smaller roles onto it. And I think, yeah, these are the few factors which is actually working very well for the fintechs.
Right, and plenty of money available in this one. And I know that you were a part of a few accelerator programs in the beginning, and a lot of people have this, perpetual question that, oh, accelerators are like just marketing, they don't help. Bank accelerators haven't helped any startups, there are no success stories. Tell me honestly, like, you have been a part of some accelerator programs. Did it help you or not?
Definitely it helped. So we were part of 2 accelerators. We were part of the ICICI Bank accelerator. In fact, part of the first batch, and we were also part of the ISME accelerator, which was in association with Yes Bank. And in fact, the accelerators actually helped a lot in terms of getting access to our banking partners, to the right teams within the banks. Again, like, even access to the prospective investors. I think definitely for any startup, accelerators can help a lot. It also depends on, like, how you actually utilize this. I mean, accelerators will not help you with, like, I mean, you also need to put that effort basically onto it. So it depends on how you actually utilize the accelerator.
So did the ICICI Bank accelerator, as you were talking about, and finally you actually ended up integrating with them as the biggest partner, did that help? Is there a connection between the two things?
Yeah, so definitely Hidesh used to run the ICICI accelerator, and he has been, like, really supportive and very proactive in actually taking us to the different departments within the bank, and he also helped us to get the first pilot out with the bank. So in our case, ICICI Bank accelerator helped us a lot. And the same I have to also mention with the other 5 of the the startups which are part of the cohorts, like Zainzi and some of the other places. Everybody actually benefited from this partnership.
Yes. And so, from a medical standpoint, right, we feel really happy when the bank fintech connect actually starts working, right? So we saw that in Yes Bank and PhonePe example, ICICI Bank and you, and there are so many other examples, right? So finally, it seems like that strategy is actually working out for fintechs.
Yeah.
I have always seen you very humble, right? And I have seen very arrogant founders as well in India. In fact, I remember, I think Narayan Murthy or somebody said that the unit of arrogance, or rather arrogance per unit of success in India is one of the highest in the world. But I have seen you very simple. I see you today also, you are just the same as I saw you 8 years back. Did this humbleness actually help you? Is it a strength? Did it help you, or did it hurt you at any point of time?
I think I don't think there is a particular rule basically where an entrepreneur should be humble or should be arrogant. Maybe I always believe that it's easier to connect with people when you are more, I mean, I don't say use the word humble basically, but you make it more receptive for people to connect with you. And I think in my case, actually, it actually worked in my advantage, able to build a lot of relationships. In fact, most of the colleagues which I work in Open, they'd been together with me in the past 5 organizations, including the 3 startups together. Same is the case with the banking partnerships as well. So I think it really helped.
Yeah. And I have always seen you are very much informed about what is happening globally in fintech, what are the trends, which companies are building what products. I'm sure that helped, right? And how do you keep yourself abreast with all that is happening in this space?
Definitely, I read up a lot on the online and keep track of platforms like Let's Talk Payments, which is now Medici. In fact, I remember like in the 2013-14 period, probably Let's Talk Payments was probably the only source of like a complete information, and it was probably the top 5 blogs in the fintech space at that point of time.
It still is.
Yeah.
But now there is
Now
Narendra
it is
Modi,
changed.
there is Narendra Modi and Forbes and CNBC and everybody talking about fintech. That's a different thing.
Right. I think you guys have been the pioneers on fintech as well. But coming to personally, I'd been like following blogs like Let's Talk Payments at that point of time, or even Medici right now, and I used to keep a track on the startups and the different fintechs in other parts of the globe and what they are doing, because many times the problems they're solving in some other parts, those are things which can be actually works for the India market as well. You can either call it like an inspiration or like cloning, but I always get ideas and inspiration from.
So, what are the other products in the pipeline? How does growth from here look like? Where would you grow?
We are launching a corporate credit card for startups, because we had we always as startups, the biggest challenge has always been getting access to a credit card, because you have a lot of payments that can only happen on a credit card, like say AWS or some of the recurring billing subscriptions. And if you are less than 3 years old, the startup will not get a credit card, and you always end up using the founder's card. And if you're a founder, either you don't have money on your card, or you don't want the card to be used for your business purpose. So that's a problem we are actually trying to solve with this card. So based on the funding and the money you have in your bank, we'll be able to actually give you 3 times more limit than your existing corporate card. And we have also built in a lot of features and functionalities on the card. For example, this card can also develop as an expense management card, so you can actually issue the cards to your colleagues and employees, set limits, and it's integrated with WhatsApp. So whenever they go to a Starbucks for a sales meeting and swipes onto it, they get the notification. They can actually scan the receipt back onto it. So this is one major product we are actually launching. We are also launching developer-focused an enhanced version of our API banking platform, which is kind of like an operating system for payments, where you can actually blend payments, whether it is incoming payments or outgoing payments, into your workflows using few lines of code. So that is another product we are actually getting ready to.
And since these are future products, I don't want to delve deeper. I understand there will be confidentiality around it. We'll discuss that offline. But in terms of growth, would international expansion be also one of the things that you will be looking at?
Yeah, so we've been getting a lot of inbound interest from financial institutions in multiple territories. So Southeast Asia is like one big market where we see, especially markets like in Indonesia, we do see a huge growth opportunity, because the market is like a lot similar to India in terms of their internet penetration. So that is one market we are actively looking to enter with a strategic partner.
Anish, this has been a fun talking to you, and as always, I really enjoy this conversation. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll do this again.